In today's story, I want to share something that sounds harmless at first, almost boring on the surface, yet unfolded in a way that left me unsettled for days afterward. Because it proved how quickly an ordinary moment can be reframed as a threat simply because the wrong person decided to focus on you for too long. That evening began like any other workday ending, with my shoulders stiff from sitting too long, my head buzzing from unfinished tasks, and my patience worn thin by the quiet exhaustion that doesn't show itself until you finally stop moving, which is why I chose to order food online instead of cooking or sitting inside a crowded restaurant. The app told me my pickup time was 20 minutes away, but traffic moved faster than expected, and before I knew it, I was turning into the parking lot of a familiar fast casual restaurant, the kind wedged between other businesses with bright signs, reflective windows, and cars constantly filtering in and out without anyone paying much attention to anyone else. I parked in a clearly marked space away from the entrance, not near the curb or the loading area, not blocking traffic or pedestrian paths. Just another vehicle blending into a lot that existed solely to hold people temporarily while they waited for food, errands, or a moment of quiet before going home. Inside my car, the engine idled softly while the air conditioning hummed, and the windshield framed a slow-moving scene of customers walking in with purpose and leaving with bags, while the sun lowered itself toward the horizon, casting long shadows that made the entire place feel calmer than it really was. I checked my phone, confirmed my order status, and leaned back slightly in my seat, letting myself relax for the first time that day, scrolling aimlessly and responding to messages while enjoying the small luxury of not having to rush anywhere for once. A few minutes passed before I noticed a woman standing just outside the restaurant doors, positioned close enough to watch the parking lot, but far enough away that her attention initially seemed coincidental, as though she were simply waiting for her name to be called or for someone else to arrive. At first, I dismissed her entirely, because parking lots are full of strangers and passing glances mean nothing. But when I looked up again and realized her gaze hadn't shifted at all, lingering directly on my car with an intensity that felt deliberate rather than accidental, I felt that faint internal alert that tells you something is off. She wasn't just looking in my direction, she was studying my vehicle, her head tilting slightly as her eyes traced from my windshield to my doors, and then to my silhouette inside, as though she were assembling a story in her mind that I had no part in creating. Trying not to read too much into it, I returned my attention to my phone, telling myself that paranoia grows when you feed it. Yet the awareness of being watched lingered like a quiet pressure at the back of my thoughts. A short while later, her reflection appeared in my side mirror, growing larger as she walked toward my car with confident steps, and instinctively I straightened up, unsure whether she needed help, directions, or simply reassurance about something minor, when she stopped beside my driver's side door and stared directly through the window, scanning my interior before even acknowledging my presence as a person. I rolled my window down halfway, the gesture feeling necessary, but already defensive. Without greeting me or explaining herself, she asked how long I had been sitting there, her tone sharp and suspicious, as though time itself were something I needed permission to possess. I explained calmly that I had ordered food through the app and arrived early, pointing out that my pickup time hadn't arrived yet, assuming logic would end the interaction before it fully began. Instead of relaxing, her expression hardened, as she told me that people didn't usually sit in their cars for that long, unless they were doing something suspicious. A statement delivered with absolute confidence, as though she were an authority on normal behavior. I looked around the lot, at the other cars with drivers inside checking phones or sipping drinks, but it was clear that none of them mattered to her, because she had already chosen me as the focus of her concern. She informed me that she lived nearby and that there had been issues, though she never clarified what those issues were, leaving the accusation vague enough to feel ominous while still offering no facts to address. I repeated that I was waiting for my food and had no intention of bothering anyone, keeping my voice measured because experience had taught me that reacting emotionally only gives people more power over a situation they don't control. After another long stare that felt more like judgment than curiosity, she told me she would be watching me, then turned and walked away, leaving behind an uncomfortable silence that settled into my chest. As I rolled my window back up, I felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with safety and everything to do with being evaluated by a stranger who had already decided I didn't belong. I checked the app again, noticing there were still several minutes left, and that's when I saw her pacing near the entrance, phone pressed to her ear, eyes darting between me and the parking lot as her free hand gestured sharply in my direction. The realization hit slowly and then all at once, sinking into my stomach as I understood that she wasn't venting to a friend or checking an order status, but actively reporting me for existing in a way she found unacceptable. For a brief moment, I considered leaving, because walking away would have been easier than proving a point to someone committed to misunderstanding me. Yet the idea of abandoning my paid order and rewarding her assumption felt wrong. So I stayed, sitting upright now, engine off, hands visible, aware that my ordinary waiting had been transformed into a situation that required caution, simply because someone else decided it should. When the police cruiser pulled into the parking lot a few minutes later, its presence felt surreal, like a prop misplaced in a scene that didn't call for drama. Yet there it was, undeniable and heavy with implications. The officer stepped out calmly while the woman approached him immediately, pointing toward my car with urgency, her body language animated as though she were delivering evidence rather than an opinion. I took a steady breath, rolled my window down again, and placed my hands clearly on the steering wheel, not because I feared wrongdoing, but because experience had taught me how quickly misunderstandings can spiral when authority enters the picture. The officer asked what I was doing there, and I explained once more that I had ordered food online and was waiting for the scheduled pickup time, my voice even, my explanation unchanged because the truth hadn't shifted. He asked how long I had been waiting, glanced briefly into my vehicle, and listened without interruption as I turned my phone toward him, displaying the order details that confirmed everything I said. While he reviewed the information, the woman stood nearby watching intently, her posture rigid, her expectation obvious, as though she believed validation was imminent. After a brief radio check, the officer walked back to her and explained that waiting in a car was not illegal, and that there was no cause for concern, his tone professional but firm. Her expression changed instantly, frustration replacing certainty as she argued quietly, gesturing toward the lot as though discomfort itself should count as evidence. When the officer returned to me and told me I was free to continue waiting for my food, the relief I felt was quiet, but heavy, mixed with disbelief that it had ever come to this. At that exact moment, the restaurant door opened and an employee stepped out holding my order, calling my name clearly into the evening air, the timing so precise it felt scripted. I stepped out of my car, collected my food, and walked back without acknowledging the woman, feeling her stare follow me as I left the space she believed I had invaded. As I drove away, I caught one last glimpse of her in my mirror, standing still with crossed arms, watching my taillights disappear as though something important had been taken from her. The drive home was quiet, but my thoughts were loud, replaying every detail and forcing me to confront how fragile normalcy can be when someone else decides your presence alone is a problem. What stayed with me wasn't the police interaction or the embarrassment, but the unsettling realization that doing nothing wrong doesn't always protect you from being treated like you did, especially when someone else feels entitled to define what normal looks like. And now, every time I sit in my car waiting for food, I notice the world watching a little more closely, not because I'm afraid, but because I know how easily an ordinary moment can become someone else's emergency.